In this video, I will explain you the secrets how to create a great Psytrance bassline. This video is part of a series in which many Psytrance YouTubers create a track together. I put you a link up here to the playlist where you find the following videos so you can check out different styles of production. We will create a bass like this. With Ana2, but if you understand the process, you can create that bass also with your favorite VST, because there are some principles and they are pretty similar. And besides Ana2, we will use some Ableton plugins to get the bass better and Shaperbox. But more to that in the end. So let's start creating the bass patch. Before we create the bass patch, I want to tell you a little bit about the Midi. So we have 3 16th notes. Actually, they are not full 16th notes, so I will show you really quickly. That will be full 16th notes. So we have like 4 16th notes here. And the kick is playing basically here. And the reason why we make them shorter is that it sounds more staccato. So staccato is basically that it is a little bit more, you could say, like punchy on the point, and it's not so much like leaking and rolling into the next note. I will show you really quickly what's the difference. So this would obviously be a little bit over the top. So we want to have it in this range here. So not too long and not too short, but somewhere like here. If you make it too short, you're kind of like losing the body. If you make it too long, then it also won't sound really proper, because the release of the note is going to the next note. I will explain in a second what the release is. So this is the first thing about the bass Midi. The second thing you notice is that here the velocity, the loudness, how loud this is triggering the synth, is reduced on the first note. And the reason for this is because we have our kick here. And as you can see, the kick is merging with the first note of the bass. And also here a little bit going into the second one, but because you don't want to kind of have like a huge amount of volume here, you reduce the volume on the first bass note. And there's another trick which I will show later in this tutorial. That said, we're starting with our bass notes here. I will keep them because they're already set up probably, but you need to kind of like tweak those parameters to your needs. We will also take a look later to this again. We start by creating a new chain. I keep this as a reference so that we can listen to it and compare it once in a while. I also suggest you that you do that if you already created a good bass in another track in the same key. Then maybe you want to keep this bass, or if you're evolving it and you're creating it, you can kind of like save it in between and then compare them to each other to know if your new bass is better or if it's weaker and what's missing. The best option to do this is to compare it. And if you don't have a good bass yet, then I would suggest that you take a track in the same key and the same speed, and then you sample a bass for you to reference to listen to. So let's put an instance of Ana2 in here. And we will set Ana to init. So now we are at the inner preset. There's not a lot of options set here. The first thing I noticed, we are 1 octave too high. Because we are playing a bass, you want to start low. So in this, if you look later in the spectrum, I can show you more about that. Then we want to have retrigger on. This means that we're always starting at the same point in the wave here. And we want to have a special waveform. And the special waveform we want to have is basically a wave, some wave like this, because we want to go from this highest point down to the lowest point and then start again. And in order to reach this, I will shift the phase a bit. And we will put the phase in a position where it's here completely at the end. Later, when we tweak the patch, we can still try different phase positions, but this is a good starting position for your phase. So we're starting here on the top, and then we are going down. The waveform saw fizz is also cool, but I like my bass to start on the top, and then you need to flip the phase later. But that's another topic. So let's start with this waveform, or look for a waveform in your synthesizer which has this type of curve, that it goes from the top edge to the down edge, and it's not so many things here in between. So this is the first adjustment we did. Already sounds a little bit more like a bass. We'll turn down the detune and the width, just in case, because we want to have our bass in mono. Detune shouldn't make any difference because we have one voice, but I want to keep it safe. And we'll turn up the volume a little bit, that we can hear it better and get more volume out of it. So that's our patch for now. The next thing we need is a low pass filter. We basically create our bass sound by modulating this low pass filter, and we don't want to have too much highs coming through. A low pass filter basically looks like this. So if you imagine this would be the frequency spectrum from all the lows up to the high points, then the low pass filter is basically just letting through the frequencies which are under the low pass here, and it's cutting all the high frequencies. Ignore this one here. So it looks like this, and basically by opening this low pass filter to higher frequencies and then closing it quickly again, we are creating this Psytrance bass tone. And we control this filter with the filter envelope. So we will set this to Ana2, because Ana2 is like a more plucky filter. You can check this out in here in the menu, in the manual, what those different filter types are. And at the moment, this is not really doing anything. So if I turn down the cutoff here, so remember this. So we turn down the cutoff and don't let any high frequencies through. This is basically controlling cutoff 1 and 2, so we need to turn that down too. Now you cannot hear anything anymore because our filter is completely closed. And now if we turn on the envelope here, we're letting this ADSR envelope control our filter. Now, before we continue, because we will tweak this filter and this amp envelope a lot, and I want to show you what an ADSR envelope is really quickly. So this graphic you can find on Wikipedia. One axis is the amplitude and the other one is the time. So we have 4 parameters in our ADSR envelope. The first one is the attack. And as you can see, the arrow moves on the time axis. So the attack is time it takes from 0 amplitude to full amplitude. Then we have the decay. It's also here on the time axis. It's the time it takes from the full amplitude down to sustain level, which is our third parameter. It's basically how loud it will be after the decay. And then we have our last parameter, is the release. It's how long it takes. You see it again here, pointing on the time axis here. It's the time we need to get from the sustain level back to 0. So this ADSR envelope basically describes our sound. And in our synthesizer, we have two of those ADSR envelopes. One is, as shown on Wikipedia, and how I explained it, is the amplitude, so the loudness. But you can also use those envelopes for controlling filters. And in the case of a filter envelope, it means the attack is the time, how long it takes to open the filter to maximum level. Then D is the time it takes to open the filter to sustain level. Sustain is how open the filter is in the sustain level. So for example, a high sustain level would be this and a low one would be this. And release is then how long it takes the filter to come back to its root position. And I say root position and not 0 because we're starting here at 20 Hertz. So for example, if I would pull this up to 500 Hertz, then our filter would always go back to like 500 Hertz. And if we pull it down to 20 Hertz, then our filter will always go down to 20 Hertz. So that's basically our root position for this filter envelope. And now we will modulate all these parameters I've shown, the cutoff, the envelope, so how much the filter envelope is influencing this filter, the envelope itself and the amp envelope, and also down here. So the curve is basically how curved this envelope is. So if I go back here, it doesn't need to be like super straight. I haven't looked quite deep into the manual what it really does, but I think it's how curved this line is. So it's not a straight line. If you know, then let me know in the comments what this curve exactly influences, but it basically influences the shape of that envelope. And the same goes here for the amplitude. I will also choose Ana1, but we might also try Ana2 here, but here it's important that we have Ana1. And the same goes here. And velocity is basically how much the velocity of the MIDI notes. As you remember in the beginning here, we tweaked our first velocity here from the first note. You can also tweak the second one a bit if you want. How much this envelope is basically influencing our velocity here. Okay. Or how much the velocity is influencing the amplitude, basically. The other way around. But we will tweak those settings here, and in the end we will have the basis for our bass sound, and then we will post-process the bass a bit, and I will show that later in the tutorial then as well. And now we will come to tuning our bass patch, and I want to lose some words before. So first of all, I already prepared this and turned all the post-processing on our reference bass here. As mentioned in the beginning, if you don't have one, you don't have that option to turn off the post-processing, but I want to have the sound as much sounding like it comes out of the synth for the comparison, that we can get as close as possible, and then I want to reference again with the post-processing on. And for tweaking the bass, I will also turn off the kick and the drums I had on in the beginning, so that we just listen to the bass. And at the moment, it sounds like this. And we will now tweak it to get a kind of like a plucky sound, but not one which has too many highs in it. So if we would open this filter envelope here too much, then we get a lot of highs through. This is this soy sound we want to avoid. But also we want to avoid that our sound doesn't sound plucky and it sounds muddy. So at the moment you cannot really hear a great pluck in it. And the pluck is basically caused by if the filter is opening fully, like in the attack, and then how fast and what kind of like shape it is falling down. And we will control this with this D, S, and the curve here. Okay, then let's start and we will tweak this. And my coach had the story of a piano tuner, and I think there's a really good reference to it. So we're not touching any knob once and we're done. So we are touching everything, tweaking it, and then we're tweaking it again. And then during the track, we create leads or drums and anything, then we will tweak it again. And if we then mix it in the end of the project, we will also tweak it again. So keep that in mind, that this is kind of like an ongoing process and not something you start once and then you're done. Now you can hear that pluck sound already. So this kind of like sound which bass guitar makes. With the release here, you can also control, or with both releases, you can also control a bit the subs. So if you remember, our ADSR envelope is basically how fast the filter closes, and the same for the volume, how fast we go to maximum volume, and then how fast we go to zero back. We also want to have maybe some attack to not get any clicks in the beginning, but not much. Same goes also here for the release. If you turn this down to 0, you will hear clicks. Or sometimes you hear clicks. Let's compare it to our reference. I think we're getting close. Maybe we are a little bit too much in the lows. Can influence this by making a higher starting point. As you remember, our filter envelope is opening and returning from and to our starting point. So if we shift that starting point, we are not as low as we are before. And our bass starts to sound brighter, but you also have to take care that if you shift that, then everything else, it's kind of like everything is influencing everything a bit. So you need to then take care to not get too much of that saw type sound on top. Let's compare it another time. Now we can hear too much of that saw sound and kind of also lost a little bit of the pluckiness. Maybe we go down a bit. Here you can hear that saw sound. If we go to 24, you don't hear it so much anymore. But it's still listenable. What I now would recommend you, if you get somewhere close to where you want to be, then just duplicate this. Because sometimes you tweak a lot of parameters and then you start making it worse. And by just duplicating it, you're basically creating a version of it, which you then can later delete, but you can also come back or look what you have maybe changed and which you changed to the worse. By the way, there is kind of like two possibilities how you can move those parameters. You can move them either like slow or fast, and the difference is if you move them fast, you better hear what's happening actually, because your ear is really adjusting very, very fast. So if you move it like slowly, then you have the problem that you might not hear the changes. But if you're moving them too fast, then you might miss the point. So the best recommendation I have is that you start fast and then you move bits by bits until you move then slowly. So start fast until you get close to the point, and then when you're close, then tweak it slowly. And also always mix fast. Don't stay like 15 minutes on one slider, then switch to another one. It doesn't matter, you will tune it anyways a lot of time. So as we are coming closer, we are moving in less big steps. So now I think we are in the right territory. Let's compare it again. This one sounds still a little bit more clicky and has less lows in it. Okay, I think we are quite done. So this is basically really good now, I think. Maybe this one is a little bit better, but I think this is acceptable. We wanna now bring it together with the kick. And we will tweak this velocity here. Something like this should be fine. As you remember, it's basically influencing this amplitude envelope with the velocities, influencing the loudness of the first bass note. Before I continue, I have to announce something really cool. I had the chance on my way to learn from a lot of great mentors, which play at festivals like Boom, Ozora or Universo Paralelo. I want to open up this chance to you as well. So I created with them a 3-month live masterclass where you can submit your tracks to labels in the end and much more. If you want to take this chance, then you can pre-register in the link below and get an early bird discount and save your spot. Now we come to the post-processing of the bass, and because this bass sounds a little bit better than the patch I recreated, I want to start with this patch. So you remember? So as you remember, this is our created patch, this is the reference. It sounds quite similar, but there are still some differences, and we will use this patch. So what do we need in order to post-process our bass? You can post-process the bass with different tools, volume shapers, for example, multiband compression you can use, or generally like compressors to color your bass. You could also use saturators, but in this tutorial we'll use EQ3. And then let's add ProQ. So the very first thing I will do here is to give our bass a low cut. We put this on linear phase, that we don't get any phasing issues. And generally it's because also we have the EQ3 in here. EQs can cause phasing issues. So phasing issues are, for example, here that we have a difference in left-right. But that's something we can treat later in the post-processing. So it's no problem to do it that way. You just need to be aware of it, and you need to listen for it if it happens, that you can do something against it. If we do add a low pass, then go for something like 6 or 12 dB, and you want to have this maybe here around like 30, 35. Okay, now we will set up the EQ3. So what we do is we move the knob completely low and the high knob completely high. We're looking for a frequency which sounds nice on our bass. So somewhere between 130 and 150, I think is nice. And here it's usually something between like 8 and 12K. Let's go with 10. You better listen when you set those, so we will also come back. Remember the piano tuner. And now we will adjust. Actually, a better way to EQ than dialing the knobs is to predict what you want to go for and then type in numbers. So you could, for example, say, okay, if I remove mids, then I start with like a minus value and then I go to a plus, and that way you also hear a little bit better differences. So let's do it that way. And now the highs. Also important, if you tune your bass, you want to tune your bass to the kick. You want to make one thing out of kick and bass. And so it's important that you listen the kick while you're tuning the bass. Also, a good exercise is that you not only listen for the bass, that you kind of like focus also on the kick and try to listen what changes in the kick if you tune the bass. We also want to go into a reference and turn the EQs on here so that we can compare not apples with oranges. In that case, if we have already a good bass, then we can compare those as well. So this bass, it sounds, I think, a little bit brighter, and it has a little bit less of that sub sound, and I think it punches also more through. It's kind of like more audible in this higher mid high range. But before we EQ this, we want to make sure that we are on the right volume. So if we solo or bass, then we want to be at -42. Maybe like -41 on those settings. So average time 100 and block size 2048. I think we are a little bit too loud at the moment, so that's something we need to take care as well. So this should be fine. We don't need to be exactly -42. And now we'll turn on the kick again. You can add some more click if you add here on the high frequencies, like 10 kilohertz. Let's compare this also with our reference. This has a little bit more highs and a little bit less lows, I think. But we are close enough, so I think this is already good. Then now we need to check our levels again. As we added some volume, we might have changed this. For higher notes like G, you want to have a less rapid curve. So here in the bass, you're basically looking from the first note, it's a G here, 50 Hertz, that you have this kind of like downfall. And on a G bass, you want to make this a little bit more flat. So if we turn the EQ off, you will see that it's a little bit more pronounced. You see this first note is like -42 and the second one is almost here, -48. And with the EQ, we are almost at similar levels. And that's something we want to reach in this G bass here. Then we have more post-processing. So at the moment, we have our kick here with peaking at -10.6 and our bass peaking at -10.7. We want to have a difference of 0.5 to 2 dBs in the kick and the bass. And also we want to make it more stable. Put the compressor settings very high, like 10 to 12 maybe. So let's go with 11 here. A very quick attack and a very fast release, but we will try this out now. Like a low knee. So the knee is basically, if you have a lower knee, it sounds like harder. And we want to turn up the makeup here. You want to let some of the transient through to kind of like get this punchy feeling. If you go on very low numbers, like 10 or something, then you would attack too much of the transient. And you want to have like a fast release to get this kind of like a flickering movement in it. We went a little bit over the top. And maybe we can also give a little bit. I think something like this is a good setting for the compression. As we have seen now, our kick is at peaking at minus 10.6 and our bass is peaking at minus 12.1. So we have a difference of 1.5 dBs and we got our bass a little bit more stable. And now we need also to look, because our kick, the low from the kick, as you remember, I showed this. So this is the lower part of our kick, and it's going into the bass notes. So our bass notes are like here, starting here, and we want to avoid that we get too much low end if we play the kick and the bass together. So if we look at our span again, so we want to keep like a similar level as the kick level, and we can do this by side chaining our bass with the kick. And one way is, for example, a volume shaper from Shaperbox. One thing with Shaperbox is that it runs out of timing in Ableton. If you have a lot of plugins here in the chain, then this will crush your timing. So if I turn this off, you see that our bass is somewhere playing here, but it's actually not playing there where it plays. So we will turn on our Midi clock and put the Shaperbox on Midi trigger. Also, we set this to a quarter note because we have our kick here and our bass notes here. We didn't set the Midi output, so our MIDI clock is basically just one quarter note here, so that you know. It's just playing a quarter note, and this will re-trigger the Shaperbox. But we need to set our MIDI to our bass channel and here to Shaperbox. And now we can see that our Shaperbox is on time. And what we now do is we will side chain this so that we remove the lows from the first bass note. So we will basically do this. So remove all the low end and also make sure that you add a point here that we don't get any clicks. But now we would sidechain everything. Somewhere here, let's listen together with the kick. And now when we look at our span here, we see that we're not peaking too high. Without the Shaperbox and with the Shaperbox, look at that point here, 50 Hertz. And now we fix this. There's one last thing you can fix. If you record the bus to audio, you will see that there's like a small piece of the bass here. And this is basically leaking into the click of the kick. And what you can try is that you take this, cut this, and give a small fade here. And then basically you have resampled your bass, and you could add it into simpler or something else. But for now we will just consolidate this with Command J, bring this back here, and now we have a cleaned up bass, and you can listen and decide for yourself which one you like more. I think both are nice. This sounds maybe a little bit better, but sometimes it doesn't sound better if you clean it up. One last thing, if you don't create your bass in Ana, if you create it, for example, in Serum, then you also need to take care of that your bass starts at the right point. So sometimes your bass is shifted so that it's not starting where the Midi starts, and you can solve that either by a phase shifting plugin, like Voxengo, for example, has here phase 979. So with this plugin, if you put it in the end of the chain, you can put force mono, and then you can basically shift the bass backwards and forwards in time, and you can also shift the phase. This is one thing how you can deal with this. And another thing how you can deal with this is with Ableton track delay. With that you can also shift the bass by milliseconds, or if you even want to go more granular, then you can use samples to shift the bass. And you can activate this here with D. This is the trigger for the track delay that it shows up in Ableton. So that said, you can also experiment with that. Of course, you can also go into your Ana here, and you can also try to shift the phase there. So let's turn this on. And then you find the perfect spot there. But here I found out, I think it's somewhere like 50.5 was really good. If you are afraid because of the EQing and the phase thing, another thing you can do before you resample your bass is to put an utility. And then you go here to mono or to bass mono, and in bass mono you can set the frequency, or I would just go for mono because I make my basses anyways only in mono. And by that you're sure that your signal is coming out mono, and you can of course then record it again. So now we have our basic bass patch, and we will create some melody on top of it. So we are in G Phrygian mode. So what you basically can do to create a melodic bass is the same as you may have seen in my lead and melody tutorial. So we will just double the loop until we have 2 bars here. And in that 2 bars, we can come up with a progression. You can either try notes out you like, or you could use chords as a starting point, and notes which obviously work together with G are chords which contain G in your scale. And in G Phrygian, chords with G would be, for example, this is like a chord with G, so you could use here like BB, A sharp, and D. So just let's try that out. So let's move to A sharp and D. So that's something which could work well. Maybe let's put it like this, that we're starting here, we're just going up to A maybe, and here also, and then we're kind of like building it up. Or you could also go. So that's obviously notes which will have a harmonic sounding because they are in good chords. But if you want to go, you can of course go also a little bit more wild and use something maybe which is not so so well in a chord and has more tension. Maybe not here, but here could be maybe a cool. If you enjoyed this video, in this playlist you find more videos like this, and in the next video Collective Intelligence will show you how to create Psytrance drums. Let me know in the comments which topics you are interested in next, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.